Welcome to the Inside Story. I'm Billy Hollowell, and this week there is no shortage of political chaos to speak about. In fact, it is one of the most historic weeks, at least in my lifetime, that I have seen in politics and news. And I am joined today by Christian Post's John Brown. How you doing today, John?
Good, Billy. Good to be with you.
So you cover politics for the Christian Post, and my goodness, so much happened this week. Obviously, we have to talk about the Trump assassination attempt. When you first saw, learned, heard what unfolded, what was going through your mind?
Well, actually, I wasn't watching the rally live, and a family member called me right after it happened. I thought he was dead when I saw the video. Lots of people thought that. But I teared up when I saw him raise his fist in defiance. And I think it's going to go down as a major turning point in American history. I mean, obviously, at this point, he's won the election, barring some other catastrophe. And we don't know all the facts yet, but there are lots of reasons to wonder just how deep this thing goes. We know there are forces that have been trying to get rid of Trump within our own government, and he was supposed to be jailed before the convention, but that fell apart too. So, and the Secret Service's explanation about sloped roofs and all that stuff, it just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, well, I think it's a very strange story. And it just, every time somebody speaks, there are more questions, right? And questions about motive of this 20-year-old alleged shooter, questions about how, what incompetence led to the rooftop being left open for somebody to get on. I mean, you can go on and on and on with the questions. And we're going to, I think, for weeks and months ahead, be asking and exploring those questions. One of the things that I found remarkable when you look at some of the mock ups and what could have happened with the shot that grazed Trump's ear, it's really remarkable because he turned his head at just the right moment. Had he turned his head a little bit more or not turned his head, he would not be here. In fact, he said during his RNC speech, I shouldn't be here tonight. And people were chanting, yes, you should. Yes, you should. But his point was he should be dead. And so because of that, we have seen a lot of people say that they believe it was divine intervention, his survival during that rally. What have you heard or seen in regards to those sorts of claims?
Well, I think it's hard, to look at some of the recreations of the scene and not think that there was some kind of supernatural element to it. He was a millimeter away from death. He just happened to turn his head, as you said, at the exact moment that saved his life. He was looking at a chart off to his right, which he doesn't usually have that chart at his rallies. He's usually looking right on the whole time. And even Trump said he was about to turn his head a little bit more, but he decided not to, which he can't really explain. He mentioned that last night. So it's very interesting.
It is. And, we're seeing a lot of people talk about this idea that there is a spiritual battle going on. And this is not, pull back, because there may be people who, have very strong political opinions on either side, and they don't want to get into thinking about the reality of the spiritual. But we are told in Ephesians 6 that there is a spiritual battle going on, good and evil. We don't always see that battle unfolding before our eyes, but we see the results of it. We see the impact of it in our world. And, we're seeing some faith leaders and political leaders and commentators, that what we saw happen at that rally, both the shooting itself and what some people believe to be divine intervention, that was part of this spiritual battle. What are people saying, prominent people, about this notion of a spiritual battle?
I've written about how people like Tucker Carlson, Russell Brand, Ben Carson, they've all talked about how this is just another example of evil spiritual forces that are at work in the US. It's almost undeniable. And this could be a coincidence, but he was shot at 6:11 p.m. And that verse in Ephesians is Ephesians 6:11, which I think that's very strange. But I also
Yeah.
think it's
Yeah.
interesting that Franklin Graham, he mentioned Andrew Brunson last night during his prayer before Trump came out. And for those who don't remember, Andrew was jailed for 2 years in Turkey, and Trump got him out. And after he got out, this was back in 2018, Andrew prayed over Trump in the Oval Office and asked that God would give him supernatural wisdom. And at the time, I thought it was kind of a strange thing to pray, but I think God might have answered that last weekend, because I actually texted Andrew about this. I know him, and he told me he hopes the whole experience just draws Trump closer to God. And I think Trump probably thought for a few moments that he was dying. He saw blood on his hand. And I think probably all the crowds, the money, the glory probably fell away for him at that moment. And I think he probably realized what really matters. And I think he might have needed to experience that if he's going to lead this country into whatever we're heading into. It just feels like we're heading into a very dark period nationally and globally.
Well, also, there was a softening in Trump over the past week that I saw, and I don't know. I mean, feel free to comment on this or not, but I think even in his statements, saying things like "it's only by the grace of God," even as he described the events, there are political speeches, there's teleprompters, and all of that. It did not feel to me like it was the same Trump describing what happened to him on Saturday night. It felt a little bit different. I think we saw even him talking about wanting to have a more unifying speech at the RNC, rewriting that speech. People can say that's all politics, but I don't think you get shot practically in the head and have a bullet graze your ear and go through that and have a near death experience without softening and really thinking about God and the meaning of life and all that. So I really felt like he softened and changed a little bit this week in how he's addressed his politics. I don't know if you want to comment on that at all.
Yeah, I was struck by how subdued he seemed. He seems like a changed man, and I have some friends who were at that convention, and it was electric, but it was also, there was a sadness because our politics at this point have gotten to the point where people are literally being killed over our disagreements. And it feels like it's transcended politics at this point.
Yeah, no, it does. And the other thing, obviously, the other big news politically, particularly for Republicans, was JD Vance being chosen as VP for Trump. And, look, Vance has been on that short list. Some people were really surprised by it. Some people thought he would choose someone else. What was your take on seeing that Vance was Trump's pick?
Oh, I think he's a great pick overall. I mean, he's said stuff against Trump in the past, which he's, now denounces. I mean, who knows what's going through his head. But the point is, Trump needs to set up someone who can take his standard after he's gone. A big problem in our politics is that boomers will not give up power and they won't pass the torch to the next generation. But with Vance, you have a 39-year-old millennial. He's from the Rust Belt. His life really embodies a lot of the issues that get to the core of what's destroying this country with addiction, poverty, all of it, but he overcame all of it. So I think he's going to be a great VP if he's elected, and he's going to be a really important figure moving forward.
When you look at the RNC, and there were a lot of conversations about this. I saw there was a Fox News panel with some people talking about the fact that this is not your typical RNC. You had Hulk Hogan, you had all these celebrities you don't always see at events like that. Of course, there's always a celebrity factor, but the energy, just the dominance of what Trump sort of wanted to happen there. What was your take? Was it a different RNC from the past? Was it similar? What did you walk away thinking?
Well, as I said, I just think it struck me as different because these issues now are not political. We're not dealing with political stuff. We're dealing with spiritual stuff, and I think there was a sense of that at the convention. And as I said, I have some friends who were there, and they sensed that too. That it's just very sobering and very somber that we have to be dealing and talking about demonic forces and spiritual war. But I don't see any other explanation for what's going on.
Yeah, and I think that, like you said, we're heading into what feels like a very dark time. I think we're going to see a lot more unfold. Especially as we get to the election, at least chaos, debate, and all of that. Now, the third thing we need to discuss here before we close is the rumor about Biden. Obviously, it's it's not just a rumor. We know there are people openly saying that he needs to step out of the race. He needs to stop running as the Democratic candidate, which, this is pretty far down the pipeline for this to be happening. If he does step down, there are even rumors that he will potentially be doing that, although the campaign's denying that. Let's say Biden does step out of the race. How could that further transform this political race?
Well, I think he probably has to step down at this point. He's reportedly lost the support of Obama, Pelosi, Schumer. Lots of Democrats are afraid he's going to cost them down ticket. It doesn't seem like he's willing to go, so I'm not sure what's going to happen. But there's talk that they'll force him out somehow, and they'll just have an open convention. Who knows? Either way, I think that just shows that the Democrats are descending into chaos, which is unfortunate for them because it seems the GOP is totally energized and united after what happened to Trump.
Yeah, and I think what happened to Trump, I mean, these are historical moments, and I think it's hard when you're living in them to ponder that, but I have pondered that a lot this week, that we are living in a very historic time, that in 20, 30 years, we're going to look back at this and be like, my goodness, what in the world was going on? And so look, in political years, we're 100 years away from the election, although really in normal days, we're just a few months away. So it's going to be interesting, John, to see where it unfolds. Appreciate you joining me, breaking it all down today, and looking forward to having you back soon.
Sure thing. Thanks.
Everyone else, make sure you head on over to the Christian Post for all the news you need to read, and we will see you back here again very soon next week here on The Inside Story.